All right. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to our October Lilly the Education Foundation Village in the Valley. So, for familiar faces and familiar participants, we host this monthly education series, typically at Smart Start in Pasco. Um, but we're changing it up this week, and we're starting tipping our toes into virtual for the first time. So this is our first virtual Village in the Valley, right? So Village in the Valley, of course, is built on the foundation of us understanding that our creating our own community or village is built on shared information and empowering each other so it's going to be more of it's a presentation tonight, but it's also we encourage questions, kind of informal discourse, and it is my honor to introduce our guest speaker, our certified parent coach, Miss Michelle Tovar, and she'll be talking about why emotional intelligence matters in parenting. So I am going to let her do the important job of introducing herself, telling more about her and her expertise. So thank you so much for being here, Michelle.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you. And I am going to share my screen now. So give me one second. Okay. And can everybody see the screen? Okay.
Yes, it looks great. I
Okay.
see the tab. Yep, we're all
Okay.
good.
Awesome. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Michelle, and welcome to today's presentation. First of all, I want to thank you for coming, whether you're here now or you're watching the recording later. I get it. Life is crazy. We're always, shuffling our kids and ourselves from one place to the other. So the fact that you're here today or watching it later, it just really shows your investment and how much you love your kids. So I want to thank you for that. So I will be presenting today why does emotional intelligence matter in parenting, and I'm going to be sharing with you four ways that you can increase your emotional intelligence for your entire family. Because you're probably like most of us, right? Most parents, none of us really escape this, where you have moments where you're feeling maybe completely overwhelmed or you're in this kind of blender of controlled chaos. So I hope to be sharing and offering you some perspectives that can allow you a little bit more peace of mind when it comes to the relationships that matter most to you, both big and small. So, a little bit about me. I am married to a wonderful husband. We're going to celebrate 24 years in November. And we have three sons. I have just launched my oldest. He just turned 19 to college. And I have a 16-year-old and 11-year-old, and they truly have inspired me to grow and to heal and improve so many areas of my life. I think, children unintentionally hold up a mirror of what we need to work on in ourselves. And trust me, I have moments in my house where it's very loud and my kids maybe are arguing or, not everyone has a smiling face, or I get annoyed because someone's not following through with something they said they were going to do. All of those things are, part of our day or part of our days, I should say. But those moments of fun and connection are possible too. Now, early in my parenting, I didn't think this was possible because I was exhausted. I was stressed. I was solo parenting. My husband was in grad school. And so I just wanted everything around me to change. But what I realized is that I really had to be the one to change and do better and to become a better mom. So if that resonates with you, if you feel like you have a lot of things working against you, I hear you. But you really, I just want to share through my experience that you really start to have a big impact when you start taking ownership and responsibility to try to do things a little differently. It kind of shifts towards an even bigger impact. So I came to this work after teaching at in the Montessori environment for over 25 years. It was a bit of a wake-up call for me when I started my parent coaching certification because, I was I was just thinking it was a business move. And even though I had so many years of experience working with children of all ages, I really didn't know what I was missing and what would really make a difference. So that's what I want to share with you today. So as a longtime Montessori teacher turned parent coach, I support parents globally to become calm, confident leaders for their children. And it has really been a blessing. So before I dive in here, you know, just a little disclaimer here. The intention here is for us to be lifelong learners. As adults, I think we owe it to our children to continue learning alongside them. And so, anything we're going to talk about tonight, the intention is not to bring up any shame or any feelings of, oh, I'm not doing this or I'm not doing enough of this. This is a space to grow and learn and build that awareness so that we can make some changes, right? So, to really understand what EQ is or emotional intelligence is to be able to name our emotions and feelings accurately and support our body and our mind to really, access, and we're going to talk about this, access that pause button before we react. So, we're really learning the sequence of self-regulation so that we can model that for our children and support them to learn how to do the same. And so, emotional intelligence is that ability to monitor your own emotions and the emotions and feelings of another person, in this case, our children, and really just have the capability of sorting through our feelings and using that as information to guide us to our thinking and our actions. So, so the ways that we can kind of change our perspective, and it might be different than the way maybe you were born, raised, or brought up, but we're just really accessing for our entire family um, the emotional intelligence and the understanding this core belief that everyone is inherently equal, even if there's a difference in, brain maturity, brain development, neurodiversity needs or capability, each person in the family is worthy of empowerment, respect, and their own emotional experience, right? Based on what skills they have developed so far. So let's get started. And if at any point anyone has a question or a comment or a share, like feel free to unmute or write in the chat and we can definitely, include that in there. So don't be shy. So number one is to get curious. Self-inquiry is the doorway to emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is the foundation for intellectual intelligence. So really, without emotional intelligence, we tend to kind of just live our life in this very broad category, like sad, happy, angry. But there's really a rainbow of emotions that can provide so much more information in our human experience. So rather than what many of us do or have been taught to do or conditioned to do, which is to avoid certain emotions, that maybe could lead to self-destructive behaviors, or actually, what we actually want to do is practice getting curious about what we're experiencing, when we're experiencing. So, like, let's look at the emotion of sadness, right? Like sadness, there's a lot of flavors of sadness. Like one flavor might be ashamed, or another could be loneliness, right? Those are reasons that you might feel sad. And if we look even deeper into, let's say, loneliness or feeling lonely, we might actually be feeling abandoned or isolated. And so when we get curious about that, then we're able to kind of take measures to really alleviate that feeling of isolation. So we might, want to ask ourselves, is this true? Am I really feeling isolated? Or is this just a thought that I keep grabbing onto or attaching? Or maybe it's a pattern that I have attached to from when, from my past. So then we can then take some steps to kind of feel less isolated. Like we can call up a friend or grab dinner, have some fun with our kids. And so until we understand really the nuances within ourselves, or it can be very difficult or even impossible to help and support our kids with their own, or even how to express what they're feeling. So the first step is to really get curious with your feelings and emotions. And the second one would be to learn to self-regulate so that you can co-regulate. So children actually require an adult to co-regulate, usually until about the age of 7 and below. And even beyond that, they still require that adult. Like even my teenagers sometimes I can tell if they're having a hard time. They'll come in, plop on my bed, and we'll talk, and they're co-regulating. They're literally borrowing from my nervous system. And so it's important for us to learn how to self-regulate first. So here's a great quote that I want to share from Viktor Frankl. He says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So, most of us are operating on some sort of, subconscious level of emotional reactivity, right? Like we feel something, we're triggered, and we react. And this is human nature. But these are, simply ingrained patterns of behavior that we likely got from our caregivers that were just adapted as a defense mechanism for emotional wounding that maybe we experience from our parents or our caregivers or our teachers or maybe even our peers. So these are the ways that our body has learned, to be with whatever experience that we're having. So there's a trigger and then there's a reaction. And I'm sure, you know what this causes. It causes a lot of disconnection, conflict, separation within our relationship. So Victor points out that the solution to this is in the pause. So we really have to train ourselves to, move out of the reactive behavior and move into a responsive behavior. And this is what nervous system science is. This is what I teach families and specifically parents to do, which is called self-regulation. So it's the ability to maintain your own emotions. Let me let somebody else in. Okay. Maintain someone, your own emotion, your emotional like thermometer, your temperature, so that you don't blow up all over the people that you love the most. And a lot of people think, oh, well, that's just the way the person is. That's just their temper, right? That's just who they are. But you absolutely can learn the skills of self-regulation. Like there's a lot of things you can do. The breath is a powerful tool. You can go splash water on your face. You can wash your hands with cold water. You can chew on ice. There are many things that will strengthen that ventral vagal nerve, um, which is important because, when that person is in your fight, when you're in your fight and flight response, you don't have access to the thinking or the higher part of your brain. And so if you have two people in that fight or flight, whether that's you and your child or you and your partner, it's just a recipe for a disaster. And, as the leaders in our home, we're essentially going to put our oxygen mask on first, right? We're going to get ourselves regulated so that we can have something to kind of give. And so once we do that, once we're able to self-regulate, then we can step into helping, in this case, our children, right? We can sit with them, We can give them space. We can learn that their reactivity is not personal. It's simply their ingrained pattern of behavior. And so we're really able to meet them at that moment with a lot more compassion and a lot more empathy. Any questions so far? Since we are got through two of them already. Okay, I'll keep going. So the third invitation is to develop your own emotional like capacity, right? Like what you're able to be with, just be with whatever is happening to you. Like, and I get it, like those harder emotions, those negative feelings, they're not great. They're not comfortable. They don't feel good, but they actually can't hurt you, you know? And so what's really great is that when the more you're able to really be with those negative emotions and really feel them fully, the greater access you have to those good feelings, those positive emotions. And so you end up feeling more joy, more connection, and more peace. And so, it's really worth the time and the effort and the practice. And so, like the next time you're feeling a negative emotion, the next time, instead of just analyzing it or numbing it or avoiding it, which maybe that's your pattern or maybe that's, kind of what you're used to, I want you to just sit with it. It works really if you get out of your head and resist that urge to listen to the stories about what the problem is or how to fix it or what's causing it, the discomfort. Just sit with it in your body. Just feel it. What what sensation do you feel? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel sharp? Does it feel dull? Where do you feel it in your body? Where does it show up? Does it show up in your neck or your shoulders, your stomach, your hands? And can you find the intense point of that feeling? And if that feeling had a color or it had a shape, what would it be? And so you're going to learn that this feeling is going to start to dissipate. And often you get really good insight and deeper clarity about the circumstance that's causing that feeling. And really, from that clarity, you can lean in to respond in an appropriate way instead of unleashing all over your child or your partner or your loved one, or just avoiding it all, like by the silent treatment, right? We're just going to avoid it. And the final shift is, really making that shift from defensiveness to curiosity and empathy. So, it's very human for us to defend our ideas and our experiences, right? But if we have a whole lot of defending happening, we're really not going to have a positive outcome. It's going to be very hard, or even a solution. And sometimes as parents, we feel that we have to defend our authority. We have to establish our authority, right? But this actually robs us from the connection and trust from the people that we need to follow us, which is our children. And so defensiveness, it's a habit, but it can be unlearned. And so when I feel my defensiveness coming in, I kind of see it as a signal, like a warning signal. And I'll often tell the person, whether it's my son or my husband or whoever, hey, I really feel like I need a break because I'm getting very defensive. Do you mind if we take like 10 minutes and we'll come back to this? And I'm telling you, this will transform the way you operate as a family. And the beauty and curiosity of empathy is that, we get to open up ourselves, to the experience. And we also are opening up ourselves to the experience of the other person. And so we do this by softening our defensiveness and really wondering, what's coming up for them and what's coming up for me. And this is going to lead us to an entirely different perspective on what actually happened. And so, we can't expect our children just to become emotionally intelligent adults. We really, as the parents, have to model within our behaviors because children learn what they see more than what they're told because they have those mirror neurons and they're literally just mirroring what they see in their environment. And so, as we, the leaders, continue building our emotional maturity, we're able to model for our kids that willingness to work with the reality rather than fighting it. We're able to feel and think at the same time. We have agency with, our emotional releases, and we can choose when to release and when to contain. We're able to, stop taking things so personally. We're able to respect people's boundaries and set our own boundaries easily. Where we become flexible, we compromise well. We are able to apologize when we make mistakes and really to reflect on it and figure out, okay, how can I learn and change from this? And then we're, able to be more present and active listening is, really, really be present and listen to our children or whoever it is. And we're willing to, ask for help when we need it and practice that humility and vulnerability. So when we embrace emotional intelligence, it's a skill set, and more people trust us and want to follow us. And in this case, our children are more willing to live up to that value. And so, if you're curious about this work and want a deeper dive, I invite you to simply reach out and schedule a complimentary clarity call on my website there, www.theparentlifecoach.com. I'd love to learn about your family dynamic and see how I can support you with this important work. Um, I thank you for your time. I have some time where I can take questions, or if anybody has any takeaways they want to share, or maybe some areas that they feel that they can grow into.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'll first start off by saying how much we appreciate you being here. And I do have some questions. I feel like there were things that were pinging in my mind, and I wrote down like keywords so I didn't forget the questions. So
Sure.
um, I feel like it really built off of a prior presentation when talking about like co-regulation. So I feel like I would love for you to share because I my questions, I guess, were related to a couple of different things. So I guess how you recognize that maybe your child needs you in that space, what to co-regulate, and maybe thinking about whether like nonverbal and verbal, right? Meeting every learner, every child, right? That what can you do maybe non-verbally as a parent that I don't know contributes to regulation, like whether it's body language and how do those things that in your experience affect either self-regulation or co-regulation?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point because when you look at communication as a whole, 55% of it comes from your nonverbal. So that's your stare, your gestures, your my kids always say that that they can always tell how I'm feeling on my face. Like some people, they just are very expressive, right?
Mhm.
Um, 38% is the tone, and only 7% is the words that you say.
Right.
So yeah, when we talk about communication, our kids are really attuned to pick up all and everything they see. And especially, the nonverbal as well, because that is kind of really how they're interacting, right? And so, if you see your child, um, if you are starting to get dysregulated yourself and you're because your child is dysregulated or because you're coming from a hard day at work or all the many things that we deal with as parents, right? It's important to kind of track that. A lot of times we're going, 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 and we miss all the signals. So if we're
Mhm.
able to access that pause and figure out what's going on for us so that we can then be that prepared adult to receive our child in whatever that emotional storm might be or whatever emotional backpack they're dumping out on us, we're able to kind of receive that. But if we're not regulated, then it's like you're matching your child and it's that recipe there where it's harder for you because it's harder for you to calm your nervous system down, and then it's going to be even harder for your child to match that.
Mhm.
Um, and so, every child is different as far as the co-regulation goes.
Mhm.
Some children respond well to touch, to soothing. Some children don't like that. Some children will respond to play, and some children are sensitive and they need to go through the wave of emotion before. Um, and so it's really, I really truly believe that every parent obviously knows their child best,
Mhm.
but sometimes in those heat of the moments, there's almost like there's no clarity there because their nervous system is so dysregulated.
Yeah. And that actually is kind of open up my next question of what your thoughts were. Cause I thought about like it's kind of love languages and also like attachment styles. Those things came into my mind. And so I thought that what you shared was insightful too, of like it's not a one size fits all, right? Because it's identifying whether like touch is comfort for some people. And I guess my question, and you gave a good example of like how to regulate yourself and kind of advocate for like, hey, I'd like to come back in 10 minutes. Do you find that like different attachment styles, like maybe, I guess two questions, like different attachment styles affect like your work and your recommendations? And also, I guess, what do you do if there's whether it's maybe two parents or a parent and a child that have different attachment styles, so maybe more anxious and they
Mhm.
become anxious when you're asking for space and maybe how you maybe recommend addressing that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can share like I guess it was like a year ago. My oldest son was applying to colleges and all that, and he was super stressed. He was like doing like the SAT prep stuff and all that. And so we kind of got in this like I guess argument, or he was unloading his stress. He was literally, just vomiting his stress all over me. And so I started to feel very dysregulated, right? And I'm talking about at that time 17, 18-year-old. So our children, their brains are not fully developed until 26, 27, 28. Even some researchers are saying. So it really depends on the child's ages, but I share his story because even though he's 6'2" and looks like all grown and everything, like they are still processing, learning how to process those harder emotions, right? Um, and so I had asked him for a break because I was starting to get defensive, and he kind of took it as I was blowing him off, right? Like he was like, ah, you just don't want to talk to me. And so again, I said, I would like to have a break for 10 minutes. So once I told him the time, he knew for him, it was like, okay, she's not blowing me off. We have a time. We're gonna, come back at a specific time. So I think it's helpful in how you communicate,
Mhm.
and effectively communicate. So it's not like I'm taking my break because I don't want to deal with you. Like I'm not giving off that kind of vibe. It's I need a break. We're not moving anywhere here. I know we're getting to that point where this is not who, like, this is not helpful. And so we're gonna come back in that time frame. So I think the communication piece is really important. And then, like I said, knowing your child,
Mhm.
like for a small child, you probably, that's maybe has more separation anxiety. You probably don't want to leave the room, right? But you can maybe transition into something else, maybe a quiet activity. I used to, my one of my clients, she used to put noise canceling, um, had earbuds on,
Mhm.
or mommy's just gonna sit on the couch for a few minutes, and she would just put those on. And that really worked with her because she would get overstimulated with noise, like the sensory overload was like dysregulating for her. I have another client that she would just put water on her face. And that was just like kind of soothed her. So I think it depends on the age of the child. It depends on their like what's comfortable for them and what and like another suggestion that I have for parents is obviously, when everyone is regulated, to practice some quiet time activities so that they know already how to access those things, whether it's in Montessori, we used to call it a peace table, or it's a calming corner, or it's just a space where they can access maybe some fidgets or some squishy toys or like those plush stuffies, or maybe some books, or maybe it has some emoji pictures that they can kind of use. My son has like a lava lamp he'll kind of play with. So creating that space where they can also go co-regulate, or try to self-regulate until you're available to go co-regulate with them.
I like that. I like that a lot, all of it. And I think that the time, like the communication also in giving like concretes and like expectations, I think that's really insightful because I know even myself, like I like to have a schedule or a plan. If I know my expectations, I'm like, okay, I can do it. But if I walk into a room and I have no idea what I'm going to do, that applies not only right to us as adults, but especially um, children, right? I think that way setting the expectation, I think is a really insightful point. And I know I'm talking a lot, so if anyone has another question, you can just hop in and jump and cut me off. But I do have another question about transitions. Like if you find that I know that Charlie mentioning transitions, like kind of coming home from the day, or if there's a lot of transitions during the day, that can be dysregulating, like kind of different environments. What do you recommend, even if it's like something small, whether and it's for the parent or maybe a joint activity that helps with that regulation during transitions? And this can apply to everybody, but maybe someone that has a harder time with transitions, whether it's cognitive communication or maybe sensory needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a true believer of snacks, especially those snacks where you have to really like crunch and like move the jaw, and I think that helps with the vagus nerve as well. I also believe in the power of play. I think children are wired for play naturally. And so it's kind of like the ace in your back pocket tool to help with transitions, right? And of course it depends on the child too. If they're overly exhausted or cranky, like there might not be up to play, but even like and I tell parents, just even that 15 minutes of connection, whether you're playing if you're exhausted and maybe you're just playing like an animal game. We're going through the alphabet and we're taking turns naming animals that start with that first letter. Or you're doing like funny accents, like something where it's like you don't have to take all this stuff out and set up and play and do imaginary pet play if that's not your thing. Um, but those 15 minutes, let's say, of connection where you're really just, your child whether they were with you all day or away from you, they crave that connection, and loving your child and being connected to them are two separate things. And so that true connection is really kind of stepping in their world and seeing life through their lens in a playful way. It's going to gain you so much more access in the rest of your day because that need is met. You know,
Mhm.
that need for affection, for connection, for love, for just being heard and being seen. It's going to allow you to kind of ease into the and not only that, but it like laughter is the nutrients for a fertile family, and it lowers your blood pressure, when you laugh, have a good laugh, or you have some fun after a hard day. So I would definitely recommend, those two things kind of pop to my head first is snacks and then accessing play during those transitions.
I like that a lot. And I think that you gave a good glimpse into that, like even something that seems small or such a short period of time, right, does make a big difference. And I think for any of us, when we feel like we have to do like reinvent the wheel or have to do something for like 2 hours for it to be useful, it's overwhelming. And so I think that you give a good idea of like it could be one small thing. It could be, a couple minutes here and there, but it's just making that step. So that was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I think that, not to go like off the deep end or anything, but I think we live in a world right now where everyone is kind of in this survival mode, right? Like there's just so much information out there that I mean, there was actually an advisory this time last year that the
Mhm.
Surgeon General said that parents are stressed. And so I think that accessing and prioritizing play as a family can help with that stress. Like, is it going to cure everything? No. Is it going to your financial burdens and worries or, you know, the fears that we have? No, but it is going to create that bond that with your children. I think I see somebody wrote, do you want to read it, Emily?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for the question. Number one. So we have, hi, what do you recommend for parents that are struggling with nervous system dysfunction themselves and are working on healing, but in the process still easily fatigued and feeling burnt out?
Yeah.
Best ways to connect with our children without them feeling like they're a burden.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very similar to what the article said is like 48% of parents feel completely overwhelmed and stressed out. And that's nervous system. Like that's your nervous system is pretty much fried. And so and I get it. Like I remember having really, really young kids and just feeling like so disconnected to myself, but I really encourage parents to connect with what brings you joy, what brings you laughter, what I have a client that recently we got her dancing again. That was something she loved to do and lost touch with it over the years just because she's, raising her kids and just focused on them. And now she dances by herself. Now she dances with her kids. And so I think like reconnecting with yourself and what brings you joy is going to help you access more joy in your life. Um, I think sometimes we, you know, um, get stuck with those negative fears and emotions and stress. And it's like that confirmation bias. We see everything around as the evidence that's proving, and supporting what our thoughts are. But a lot of times those thoughts are just thoughts. We have like 50,000, I don't know how many thoughts a day, and not all of them are true. And so that ends up, causing dysregulation in our nervous system. And so going back to the question, I think being in tuned with your nervous system and like getting the messages, like when I am dysregulated, I feel it instantly, like on my neck or sometimes my stomach. And so that's my signal. Okay, what am I feeling? And like I mentioned in the presentation, like sit with that feeling, you know, and really try to access things that are going to support your nervous system. So whether that's breathing, for me, it's prayer. For me, it's going outside for a walk. For me, it's music. Like whatever it is that is your go-to tool, like you need to have that little tool basket ready to go. But a lot of people don't take the time to really connect with their body. They're just living in their head and they get stuck in the spinning thoughts and they're separated from their body. Um, so hopefully that kind of answered.
Yeah, I think we got some great feedback from her in the comments saying that it makes a lot of sense and that she definitely stopped having fun and enjoying herself because she was stuck in doing or thinking. And thank you so much for the reminder and kind of shared a little bit about having multiple panic attacks and hyperventilation in the past year. And it's been heavy, but learning these tools are a part of my recovery. So I'll start by saying thank you so much for sharing that. And
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that I'll
I'm
hand it
so
to you.
sorry. It's not easy. There's a lot of you're not alone. You're not alone. There's a lot of weight in our world right now, and I just want you to know you're not alone. And um, I invite you to talk more with me. I'd love to support you. You there's it's never too late to learn more and to have more tools available. I always like to describe it like it's like we have this garden, right? And some seeds were already planted for us, from our childhood. But we're able to weed out some, plant some new ones, fertilize, So it's never too late.
I like that garden analogy. I hadn't heard it put that way, but I think that's really important because I think sometimes, right, in general, a lot of us can feel like, okay, how do I either start over or start from scratch or it's overwhelming. Where do I even begin?
Right.
And I think, like even I always say like small things, right, are big things in the grand scheme actually. And so I think it's nice when you channel it or you present it in a hopeful way, right? That there's, hey, like you're here, and the fact that you even care enough to be here, right, is speaks volumes. So I think that I appreciated that your analogy there. And of course, the sharing is um, incredibly important. And I think that creating again that community um, makes a large difference. So thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I agree. And a lot of this is learned behavior and habits, like of what our brain just is used to it. It's like your default pattern,
Mhm.
right? But it doesn't mean that you can think that it can it's been with you for a while, but you can start some new patterns. It's never too late. And the work is really it's I think the work for ourselves as the adults is so big because I mean some of us it's breaking generational patterns. These are patterns that have been, 5, 7 generations ago. And to really do that work and change a trajectory for your children and their children is is some serious stuff. It's not easy, but it can be done. And I think we owe it to our children to give them what they deserve. And we owe it to ourselves as well.
Absolutely. So I'm going to be quiet for a second and see if anyone else has any questions or comments. If you're more comfortable typing it or speaking, whatever you prefer. Comments, questions, anything. No matter how many Zooms I've been on or virtual calls, I feel like time always goes much slower when you're like, I'm gonna wait for a second. You don't realize how long a minute is until you're waiting in silence for 1 minute.
It's
Um,
so true.
here we go. We have another comment here is that your last reflection reminds me of the Bible verse that has been on my heart lately. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Mm,
Encouraging to hear your reminder that we can break old patterns and habits.
yes, I love that. I love that.
I agree.
I think that there's also a lot of pressure generationally. Sometimes like I have couples clients that came to me, a couple that came to me, and they're getting a lot of pressure from their parents, who are polar opposite, like in their parenting styles. And so this couple came to me really struggling. It's like, we don't really want to do this, but we don't want to do that. So what do we do? Like, how are we going to be, how can we be confident and feel good about the way we want to parent when we have all this noise? No, no, that sounds really rude when I say it like that, but they have this, they do. They have this noise that is like influencing them. Um, Good intentions,
Mhm.
but I think a lot of parents also struggle with that because it's a lot of information out there in the world. And then you have a lot of people telling you you should be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. And it's like, well, what do you do? And if you wanted, and then and even within your partnership, right? Like he has strengths, you have strengths. How do you get on the same page for most things, right? And that's one of the things I love to teach or work with parents on is sorting through what your values are, right? Those are like your North Star. It's going to help you teach and create boundaries for your children. Kids need limits, they need rules, that they're evolving humans. But we have to have clarity on it um, and really, conform to what feels good to us, not necessarily what society is telling us or what this person's telling us or all the other extra things that are being like that are overwhelming us. So I think that came up with me when I said I mean when I read what Lexa wrote about conforming to the patterns of the world and like there's so much and I can go on for hours, but in the 70s, there's so many behaviorists that were like squash the behavior, corporal punishment, like all this stuff. And now there's more current research that really is more up to date and really just catering to the whole child and that respect piece. And so, um, maybe spanking happened to you and now you don't want to do spanking. And so now you're getting comments from your mom or dad or whoever saying, well, if you did this when and so it's overwhelming for parents.
Mhm.
I think someone else said something.
Yeah, so much information pulling us in so many different directions. I'm learning to stay grounded, clear, and not spiral. I'm healing my own childhood wounds as well. Yeah,
Yes.
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell my oldest all the time, I raised you, but you raised me also because some of, you know, it's always like you're most triggered by in your child what you haven't healed from. And so, or maybe what you didn't receive. And
Mm.
so I totally get what you're saying. It's just, healing yourself first. Again, putting the oxygen mask first so that you can lean in on your children with the best version of yourself. Not perfect. That doesn't exist.
I think that's a great analogy again with the oxygen masks. I think a lot of the time, right, we hear things about like guilt or like in a relationship or as a parent, like this guilt of like, well, I want to take care of my kids. I want to take care of my partner. But I think it goes back to what you were saying, right? Of like you can model in taking care of yourself. That might feel like you're taking away from your child. You're taking care of your child too, and like modeling that behavior. So I think that was a nice way to put it because I think a lot of it, I think things we do are fueled by guilt and, thinking at night of like, did I do enough or should I have done this differently? Which is so hard because we shouldn't spend our lives feeling that way. But I think it's a good reminder of like, I'm not only doing this so I can fill my cup, but also I'm modeling this behavior to teach my child so in their future they see a parent or, even a partner or whoever that is doing this for themselves. So thank you for
Definitely.
sharing.
Definitely. Yeah, we have to kind of model all the skills that we want our kids to eventually have when their brains are fully developed. And so we have to really find that within ourselves
Mhm.
to do the work.
Absolutely. Well, again, if anyone has any comments or questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. You can email them to me. I can share them with Michelle. You can email Michelle, and she shared her resources as well. So I think we're all here. I think this is kind of why we're here, right? The village in the valley, but for in truth, we want to be able to share things like this, whether it's a conversation or a positive word or just kind of shared experiences and understanding. It makes us better. So thank you for being part of this. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here and taking the time to share your expertise with us. We appreciate it more than we can say. Um, so, yeah, thank you very much. And we look forward to continuing to connect.
Yeah, thank you so much for having. I love the name Village in the Valley. I think that's so cozy. I love it. But I appreciate you inviting me into your community and I hope we maybe can have another one day and maybe in person.
Yes. We would love that. We would love it. We have some thank yous here um, in that chat. And again, thank you. Thank you all for being here. And again, we will have this recording. We'll have this recording posted in some shape or form. We're going to figure out that in a second. But again, thank you guys so much and have a wonderful night and rest of the week.
Yes, thank you guys so much. Take care. Stop sharing.